Hi, it's James giving you some feedback on your project. Hope Peru is doing nice. I hope your cool environmental studies are going well. I wanted to check in with you on a couple tips I had about this because this track sounds cool. It's a cool sketch, but there's a few things you can do to make it a little more usable. Some of them involving the morphing effects stuff. A couple things about the drum machine too. The drum machine is just insanely dry right now, and I really want to make it feel more smooth, a little more sexy. So some of the things I'm going to do to it you might not like if you're not really going for the sexy vibe, but I just feel like the classic raw dry 909 is just, you probably want to polish that puppy up a little bit, and I'll give you some tips, but that's not really the focal point of the lesson. So I'm going to focus on your morphing effects rack, as that's the primary focus of this level 5 beginning stuff. So they want you to have a multi-effect switcher, which you don't really have. You have a morphing effect, I believe, unless it's on your return tracks. Return tracks is a great place to put a switching effect. Especially because they can be really CPU intensive if you start piling these morphing effects up on return tracks. But watch my technique. I got 4 reverbs right here. What I can do is I can just make a switch by using my arrows, put this out to a macro, and set my range right up in the browser 0 to 3. Claro? La verdad. So now you adjust this and you're switching through your verb select. And then, of course, you'd probably want to come over here. And with each of these, you could just go hot swap. So this was your first reverb, which was the boring dry one. Not to say yours, which is the boring stock dry reverb. But now I'm just going to throw some presets in here. And you're going to have yourself a nice little switcher. Big room. Just make sure the dry wet mix is all the way pumped. There you go. So look at this. Now we can switch a room. So if you hot swap here, you'll get just the device. If you hot swap here, you will get racks, because this is where they're expecting you to want chains. Now if you do it here, well, you know, as I did this, it's still giving me just devices. What if you hot swapped on the chain? It would point you right into the audio effect rack folder. It used to do that. It's giving me overdrive for some reason. Okay, well, I speak too soon. Watch out where you're hot swapping from. I know, like, if you do pads on the drum rack, it will intelligently look like into the right pad location. So if you grab hot swap from the pad where the kick should be, like on the C, it's going to bring you into the kicks. And if you do it on the D where the snares are, it's going to bring you into the Ds, or into the snares. So that's a little side note tip about hot swapping, which again can be toggled with the letter Q. But before we get into the drum machine anymore, I'm just going to power through a couple tips about your effects rack. One in particular I find is that there's a kind of better way to use macros with LFO, Max for Live LFOs. Right now what you're doing is you're modulating the macros with the Max device. What I recommend instead is modulate the target with the Max device. So go to Redux Volume, send this over to it, and then take this knob and send this into the offset of the LFO. This way, your knob here will still work as Redux Volume, but along the way you'll have some modulation handles. So check it out. I'm going to try and fix this. If I break it, don't kill me here. So see how this is going to that morphing chain volume? Is that what it is? Chain selector. Okay, so the chain selector macro is right here. So what I'm going to do is this. Unmap. Instead, I'm going to send this to this. I can't. I got to take the macro off first. Unmap from. Now I'll be able to map it, right? And now I take this morphing chain selector function, and I do offset with that morphing. So now this is my chain selector, but I have modulation that can happen to it on the way. I'm basically just reversing the order of the modulator and the via, like the attenuator. So this way, like for instance, I can say depth put on 7. Well, you've got rate and depth here already. Amount, yeah, I'm going to go depth on 7 and rate on 8. Check out how tight this is. I'll follow your same naming methodologies. This one I'm going to make hot pink though, so it matches your morphing chain selector knob. Look at how cool. Oops. Yeah, so last but not least, we got to turn this all the way up, and then we got to go to the range of this guy. Where can we attenuate the range? That's on depth. Oh yeah, you know what? We don't want this depth on the macro. We want to fix it. No, you know, forget it. We can. Sorry, I'm obviously improvising with life here, but like if I grab this and I turn this all the way up, this is the one I want to fix the range of. So I turn this down. Yep, there it is until it hits 32 in this case. There it is. So it's an arbitrary number up there, unfortunately, but luckily with this technique of turning the knob to the max range and then watching it, we've succeeded in having a full range morphing knob with a modulator built right in. Oh, but it's synced, so here we go. Oh yeah, you have to do the same thing with the mouse. So that's a super hardcore pro tip for you there, Renato, but I know you're ready for it. It's level 5. And introducing modulation to your macros is a beautiful thing, but I'd like to be able to hang on to the macros. You dig it? So do the same thing with Redux volume. Unmap, unmap. Send this straight into the Redux volume, and then send this to the macro. So now I'm adjusting Redux volume, and I have modulators. I'd actually probably stick with this. So we got purple and green mixed up here, purple, green, so the color coding is all jacked, but that's a tip. So let's do the drum machine thing quick. This New York style compression setup is pretty solid. Frankly, usually how New York style is set up to get the most of it is you turn that ratio up pretty hard. You're going to go way more than you normally would. You're going to crush this thing extra hard. Let's listen to it by itself. And the super fast attack business is no good, so you want to slow that down or you're going to end up with some distortion. And especially with percussive stuff, depending on your ratio, you want to slow that down a little to peek through. The good news is, though, with New York, as long as you keep this quieter than the dry signal, the natural transients are still going to peak out over the top. So let's hear it in the mix now. Watch. None of it. There you go. So the natural transients are still the loudest, but down in the quieter ranges you get this heavily compressed bottom that's keeping it all kind of glued together. But onto the individual sounds. Generally, with all of these, with the core kit, my favorite thing about using these core kits out of the factory library is that they come all pre-mapped with the simpler macros and a pretty logical layout. With the hi-hats, I'm high-passing the living shite out of those things, and I'm cutting them tight. Check it. I also want a little more velocity dynamics on those ghost notes. You hear me? when you get the string bouncing or the stick bouncing like that, you need to have some little more velocity dynamics. See how these are all the same? A little bit of this and a little groove pool here is going to help us really bump. So let's go ahead and go swing 16. Turn it down a ways, drop it in here, dial it in, back it off. See my technique. I grab one that's a pretty high number, 75, 85. And I pull that timing back most of the way just to give it a tiny nudge. I want all these to be higher. Feel me on that? So a little bit of softness on that filter, tighter decay on the hi-hat, and same deal on the snares and the claps. They're so long. I feel like you gotta tighten them up, tune them down a little too maybe. Check it out. If you turn decay down, glue up, it's just way more tight sounding. If you do a clap, back this off and pitch it down a little. These are my little 909 tuning tips. And when you hit this tom fill up in here, the tom is just so insanely dry. There's a lot of things you can do to the tom, but I would definitely sop it up a little bit. It's kind of lacking. It just feels like it's just straight out of a Guitar Center like sales floor. You got to group those together and process them. Check it out. Just command click on your toms, low, mid, and high. Command G to group them. Call this toms. Oops, don't add a new track. Command R, toms. And now you could put a resonator on there. You could put a filter in a resonator. You could put a delay on there. You could tighten up all their decay times. Because look, by grouping the channels together like that, it makes what's called an embedded drum rack. This is kind of a cool little hidden feature in Live. But this is a grouped drum rack submix channel, and it's basically a component of the master drum rack, really. It's kind of like a little sidecar to it that will handle its own choke group even. So for instance, maybe you don't want any of these toms to overlap each other. That'd be a pretty common thing to do. And maybe you could even turn the decay time down, and then you could copy value to siblings. So now this is looking inside of the other embedded drum rack, the other racks, chains that are inside of this drum rack, and applying the same macro parameter, that 132 millisecond decay time to the other two core library tom drums. So check it out. I click here, boom, they're turned down too. Oh man, check it out. All right, so now let's do this. Let's put a frequency shifter on there, and then a delay. But a simple delay with like a 13, like a super tight. Check this out. Oh, check out how tight that sounds. Oh my god. Now we put a little saturator on there, or maybe that glue compressor with a soft clip on, just to really gnarly it up. That is so fat. Now we'll, I don't know, reverb. Check out what's happening to your tom drums. I'm destroying them. So the other thing I'd do, you know, is I'd start saving these presets into my library. I can't really F around with any of these main pad sounds and stuff because they're all frozen up, you joker. So if you want me to be able to deconstruct your racks that are on these frozen devices, I just generally highly recommend learning and mastering the Ableton Live devices, especially while you're paying someone to teach you. I want to be able to dig into this stuff. So, all right, Renato, all the best from way the hell up in Minnesota. Keep fighting the good fight. Much love. Saludos.